Close on a couple of them anyway. My name is Adam Barber. I'm working down here on Little Possum Creek again today, and I wanted to show off some of my rock throwing skills. And then when I started doing it, I found out I didn't have any rock throwing skills. As you can see, I barely got close on a couple of those throws. But anyway, I wanted to use that for the illustration because that's what we're talking about today. And it's a story that most of us have heard, whether you grew up in church and you were there every week, or maybe you just went to a couple of vacation Bible schools, and that's David and Goliath. Now, kids love to hear about David and Goliath, especially young boys, because we think about, yeah, I could do that. I could go out and I could sling some stones and knock some things down. But it's not just a story for children. It's written for all of us to learn from because it has a lot of deep and profound spiritual truths. Now, most of you know in the story, that Goliath was a giant, an actual giant, over 9 feet tall, and had a full suit of armor on, and he's, a warrior, it says from his youth. He'd been a warrior his entire life. Who knows how many people he'd killed, how many battles that he had fought in. He was a battle-hardened killer. And so he's out there on the battlefield, standing over 9 feet tall. I have no idea what the guy weighed. And it said that the shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. So not only is he huge, not only is he dangerous, he's got a weapon out there that's, probably looks like a small tree trunk that most of us couldn't even pick up and tote around, and that's what he uses to kill other people. So, the army of Israel did what most of us would do, which is they cowered in fear. And, in the face of this killer, this huge giant that they knew that any of them by themselves would not be able to overcome. Now, David, who was a young boy, actually a shepherd, a tender of sheep, when he comes out there to face Goliath, it says before that he went out and picked up 5 smooth stones. And you could see what I did with 5 of them, which wasn't much of anything. But see, David got 5 stones not because he was a bad shot and he needed a couple of tries. It's because Goliath had 4 brothers. And he fully intended to take out the whole family line that day. But, and we know later that David slung a stone from his sling, hit Goliath in the forehead. Goliath fell. David ran over, took the sword, chopped off his head, and victory was declared. Now, most of us think that David won that battle when he slung that stone and hit Goliath. Or if you want to be clinical and kind of medical about it, say, well, he was technically still alive, so really he won the battle when he ran up and he got the sword from Goliath's sheath and cut his head off. But that's not when the battle was won, folks. It was actually won right here before the first shot was fired. And this is in 1 Samuel chapter 17. Let me find my place. 17 and 45. Then David, he gave his come at me bro response to Goliath. He says, "Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel." So right there, folks, is when the battle was won. Because David recognized that it was not by the strength of his might, by the strength of Israel's armies. It wasn't by strength of arms that he was going to overcome Goliath, that Israel was going to overcome the Philistines. Because they had not just come against him with weapons of war or an overabundance of numbers that they could just totally overrun the armies of Israel. They defied the name of the living God of Israel. Now that's the God that you and I serve today, the very same. And when we read stories like David and Goliath and we're encouraged, maybe we're emboldened to go out and face things, it's really not a story about us individually though, folks. It's not about how you and I can overcome some kind of adversity in our lives. Mine was the adversity of addiction, which I can assure you that was a huge giant that no matter how many stones I flung at it, it wasn't going to do anything. This is about Jesus. Every single story in Scripture is about Jesus because he is the overcoming man. He is the one that has overcome death, hell, and the grave. Every type of adversity, every type of tribulation that we are going to have in this life, Jesus Christ has already overcome. And us believing him, trusting in him, of what he has done for us, we're in him. And being in him, we overcome. But it's not, the Bible's just not a self-help book. that we can sit down and read A, B, and C about how we're going to do this, that, and the other, how we're going to overcome whatever adversity that we have in our lives. It's about how Jesus has overcome. And we trust in him, we have faith in him, and that's how we have victory. That's how we have victory over sin. That's how we have victory over something like addiction, or maybe you have something else in your life where you've got just, you can't get along with your spouse, or, you just can't seem to get your finances right. You cannot just pick up scripture and, like we can any self-help book, and think, well, I'm just going to read this one chapter, I'm just going to read this one verse, and it's going to tell me what to do. You have to take what's known as the whole counsel of God, all of Scripture together, compare Scripture with Scripture, and learn what it's saying. And then we trust and believe God, folks, and that's how we have victory.